I want to speak here about Star Wars. As we all know, it's not only an American spectacle but also a universal one, and is understood by many cultures throughout the world. It's a special year, 2017-2018, because the franchise is releasing two movies. The one that is already on theater, the episode 8, The Last Jedi, as well as a movie that will be related to the Solo's youngster's life, which is the second anthology movie that will be released in May 2018. So I want to speak a little bit about my experience as I see Star Wars, as I said, as a universal, and I've been watching the movies before in French in the past, as well as, of course, in English. As well, I have seen these two movies, episode 5 and 6, in German: The Empire Strikes Back, Das Imperium schlägt zurück, and The Return of the Jedi, The Rückkehr der Jedi Ritter, which was a very, very hard experience in terms of understanding the Germanicism context in the story within the traduction. Of course, when you watch all the episodes in French and in English, the story does not change, but of course you can come to certain differences when it comes to Anglicism versus Francicism in the interpretation of the prologue of the story and its epilogue. Uh, yes, I like Star Wars. I'm a fan compared to other space thematics in theater, such as Star Trek or Stargate. I have not followed these both franchise, neither of them as much as I have followed Star Wars. But when it comes to going further in the expanded universe, it's true that I don't know a lot. I have just the broad information when it comes to Star Wars Legends. I know that the difference appears with canon when we speak about the event that happened after episode 6. Correct me if I am wrong. In terms of genealogies, trees of Skywalkers and Solo, the sons and daughters that are mentioned in Legends in the past are not the same that has been used by the new producer ever since taking over with episode 7. Same thing for the Ewok movies. Those movies has been released after the original trilogy, and I probably have watched on VHS few minutes on one of the two. It represented the Ewoks, but it was really an expanded universe kind of movie, so it's not really the mostly common theme that I have been following. But when it comes to following the original movies themselves, as I remember Star Wars of 1997 being released as a Star Wars without mention of Episode 4, because at the time the director did not know if he will make further movies for his already written screenplay. So we had the story of the 1977 movie, the original one that was even released on VHS, without the introductions that says it's Star Wars Episode 4 and the small introduction written in yellow. Some remarks regarding the first movie that has been also filmed, just to remind my viewers that in North Africa, my origins, but not in Morocco, in Tunisia, this movie has been filmed when it comes to the scenes of Tatooine in Tunisia. And by the way, the area where it has been filmed is called Tatooine, from where the word Tatooine has been used for the movie. Many words from other languages have been used within that same context of using the word of a language for a character or a planet. Vader is the word for father when it comes to Dutch. So a remark regarding the 1977 movie that will be renamed Star Wars Episode 4, when finally there has been a decision to make an Episode 5 and 6 at the end of the 1970s, and changing therefore the new introduction with Star Wars Episode 4 on it. Of course, Jabba was represented as a human in this first movie, and we all had that confusion when we saw Jabba as a creature in the original 1983 Episode 6. So we have seen two forms of Jabba, even if it was the same guy that wanted to hunt Han Solo, but it looks like a human in the 1977 a movie, episode 4, and it looks all of a sudden like a creature in the 1983 movie. Of course, things have been remastered, changed into human to the creature that was supposed to be used originally, while the movie has been remastered in 1997, 2004, and 2007, correct? Something like that. So, success of this first movie in terms of accolades as well, the most successful one in terms of receiving Oscars, Academy Awards. And after this movie, before speaking about 5 and 6, there was a lot of TV shows. Correct me if I'm wrong here as well. Something with the ABC late night show with Star Wars, plus of course other things that were related to the characters of Star Wars. It was very new at the time. It's like the series Cosmos 1999 when it has been released. I mean, the year 1999 looked like something magic at the time, like the Time Machine, the original movie that has been released in 1960s, and they represent the inventor going to 1966, only 6 years after the movie's date, and the imagination of seeing London looking like a futuristic city that is not even looking like today is something that is part of this imagination, tracing back to the era of Jules Verne, who imagined the 20th century to be more advanced to even what we have now in the 21st century. So to get back to the subject of Star Wars, of course success will come for the viewers when it comes to episode 5 as well, The Empire Strikes Back, as well as episode 6, Return of the Jedi. But and that was named in the beginning, before release, The Revenge of the Jedi. But in order to be on the side of the good, it has been changed from The Revenge to The Return of the Jedi. And what I think is it was very confusing in the beginning, of course, when you see episode 4, 5, and 6, and you understand what will be the outcome of George Lucas in this kind of artwork. And of course, it goes along with creating just one episode in the beginning without even naming it number 4, and then jumping all the way to naming it number 4 instead of number 1. Knowing that the original trilogy took a long time between its release and the beginning of the work on the prequel trilogy, which I think took Lucas a lot of work, because the first movie of the prequel, as we all know, has been released in 1999. And it was a whole story, a whole focus on how the father Skywalker would turn into the dark side. That was the main theme of the story, as we know, but there is always some specifications in terms of politics in the prequel trilogy that were not furtherly deliberated on the original one. Maybe just on the first movie of Star Wars 4, when we have the discussion between Grand Moff Tarkin and the other military crew, the high-level military crew, regarding the governors, the emperors, the dispatching of the galaxy, things like that. But it's not going in detail. Furthermore, in episode 5 and 6, it's focusing more on the emperor and the father and the son, and that conflict between the good and the bad in terms of a philosophical aspect. I would have seen really the emancipation of the political philosophy, let's say, of Star Wars only when it came to the prequel trilogy. Of course, everybody imagined how could all this be developed before, like how the Republic looked like before the creation of the Empire, because of course we move in time and everything has should be looking like more basic and less developed. But of course, it's not the same analogy when we speak about having everything developed in terms of visual effect, technical graphics, things like that. So there has been a great success to me too when I see the episode 1, 2, and 3, and we patch them up with episode 4, 5, and 6. It is true that there is a 19 years gap between the two trilogies timelines, and that's part of the story. But anyways, you get to the bottom by showing how Darth Vader was technically created as a new cyborg in the new plans of the Empire. Regarding the explanation of the events of the sequel now, this new movie, I would say that to me, the first impression while watching episode 7 is to have that idea that the new producer really wants to detach the story once and for all with all what happened in the prequel and original trilogies. Like, there is, as we know, like 30 years gap between the events of episode 6 and episode 7, and all we start seeing, of course, in the Force Awakens are new characters, and we try to link them up with the old crew of the 1980s on the original trilogy. Some answers got answered during the movie, but it's really hard. I will keep right now with episode 7, and I know that episode 8 has just been released like 2 months ago, and I don't want to spoil the story for my viewers and listeners here in the internet as well. But just to think, I mean, the origins of the new character Snoke is maybe a mystery that, according to me, and again without spoiling, will not be revealed if we stay on the context that Star Wars does not take a flashback detailed story. Of course, there is some few flashback that has been used on episode 8 for very micro scenes, but again, it's the very first time in this kind of space or opera type of franchise when it comes to the prequel, sequel, and original. So it's very hard to me to think how we can know further more about Snoke, and how could such a powerful evil character not be noticed during the whole saga of
Excuse me. When
to
caused a hard on
Darcy just trying to get his dominance over everybody in the galaxy. So it's very hard to realize how you couldn't sense it, and how this powerful character stayed on the dock during all these years of the Empire. So to me, it's very difficult to see how we can talk a little bit about Snoke's whereabouts before the creation of the First Order. There are some few details that says that he was seeking some holy rocks under the castle of Darth Vader in Mustafar, but that's only thing that we only know. So why this character that is so powerful, maybe even more than the Emperor in terms of manipulating the Force and the things around him, was not even mentioned. So it's a very thing. It's something that the new producer has yet to explain. And again, I didn't even speak about the events of episode 8. I'm just mentioning that even if you watch episode 8, you still have a lot of questions that are very unanswered, that has to be really caught up in episode 9 to make a better understanding. But again, that's for the sake of the producer. I mean, you're gonna lose attention if you don't give a story that is looking as catching as the first 6 movies that could be sewn together between quotes in the same context. So we'll see, and many things could be called when it comes to the future. Will there be, in terms of future trilogies, something that will explain something after episode 9? I think that it's not likely to have that in the 2020s, because this franchise has proved us that it's always very generational, by creating one in the 1980s, one in the early 2000s, and one in the late 2010s. So we'll see what's gonna happen. But again, if they place themselves in this new trend market of flashbacks, will they be creating an episode 10, 11, and 12 where they can probably explain what was before the prequel, the Old Republic, something regarding the what happens between the original and the sequel, or even something about the origins of Snoke in the unknown regions, or maybe something about the hot space. As you know, in the general culture, and this is one of the few things that I know from reading the issues of the Legends, is that the hot space has never been invaded by neither the forces of the Empire or the forces of the darkness, neither by the Republic, and this stays in the books. But once again, there is a conflict, like I said, between legends and canon when it comes to speaking about the genealogical trees of Skywalker and Solo after the Battle of Endor. So very surprising things that have been shown in the first two movies of this sequel, and looking forward to seeing what's going to occur in these next movies, if it's going to be a complete detachment of the old generation with the new one, and if it opens, like I said, an avenue for a future trilogy, or it's going to close down on everything. But it's very gloomy to me. That's my impression. The anthology movies as maybe an original thing. Like I said, there has been something that has been added, like the Ewok movies in the past, a cartoon movie that was like episode 2.5 about the Clone Wars, but not official movies outside of the episodes with characters and actors, and these success of Rogue One, because to me, ever since the new producer took over, Rogue One is really by far the most accomplished movies compared to The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. It speaks about a lot of things and some events that are related to what's going to occur right after that in episode 4. And of course, as you know, there is an opening for the new Western space movie of Solo's journey that will also take place between episode 3 and episode 4. Like I said, 19 years is a vague time, and creating another trilogy between that space timeline is also something that could be maybe envisaged. But again, I mean, you can have a plethoric amount of ideas when it comes to the expanded universe and creating as many stories as possible, but it's very difficult to see how you can fit it given the original way of doing things. No, Lucas came with 4, 5, and 6, knowing that he was going to do 1, 2, and 3 in a chronological order without using flashback in this artwork of space opera. Now, the new producer came with a new philosophy, which is breaking, first of all, with all the core story of the first 6 movies, and expanding it to something new. The philosophy, it's not just an intergenerational change, it's a change of like a bottom line change. It's not just a clash of opinion change, it's really something very, very core change, and hard to realize and to see if more changes are going to occur, such as creating a 10, 11, and 12 that focus on the past, or a 10, 11, and 12 between 2 trilogies. It depends. So like I said, it's very thrilling, and these are just remarks from a fan, and mostly I use the message of Star Wars within my philosophy of universalism to advance a lot of other things, a lot of other contexts of action. By the way, I don't know if this next movie released in May will be the first one without C-3PO and R2-D2 that I consider. That are the only characters that have appeared so far in all the movies 1 to 8 plus Rogue One. So we'll see if they're gonna be there or not. I'm checking that with everybody else who's gonna watch the movie, I guess, in the late spring. Thank you for watching.